Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I think.
All right, let's go.
So mine's a little bit more, serious, on a serious note, but I want to share with you this evening some data that was in a recent article about the number of arrests that have been made in Montgomery County Public Schools and how that data contributes to the school to prison pipeline. So if you could pull up that first chart for me, thank you. So, in the article, it shared the number of arrests that occurred in MCPS through the 2016-2019 school years. As you can see, the total number of student arrests is being compared to the total number of Black student arrests.
So this is
You may
Montgomery
also
County
notice,
Public Schools in Maryland.
yes, Montgomery
Okay.
County Public Schools in Maryland. Sorry,
Okay.
there's one in Pennsylvania, I believe, too. So you can also notice that almost half of the arrests are of Black students. And could you possibly click to the next slide, please?
Absolutely.
On the top graph specifically, it shows that 48% of the arrests in MCPS are Black students. Now, the kicker is Black students only make up 21% of the total MCPS population. So, unfortunately, this data is not surprising, and not for me, for someone who's been working with equity in education, because our Black, Indigenous, and students of color are often disciplined at disproportionate rates compared to their peers.
Mhm.
So, one of the things right now that are going on across the country are many schools are grappling with whether or not to continue using school resource officers, or SROs, they're called, including Montgomery County Public Schools. Most of the research shows that having police officers in schools generally correlates with higher arrest rates, which funnels kids into the school to prison pipeline. Now, according to the ACLU of New York, the school to prison pipeline refers to education and public safety policies that push students into the criminal legal system. Schools send students into the pipeline through the zero tolerance policies, which involves the police in minor misbehavior and often lead to arrest and juvenile detention referrals. This can also result in criminal charges and incarceration.
Hmm.
The pipeline disproportionately impacts youth of color, youth of disabilities, and our LGBTQ students. So, panel, my question for you is, what do you believe schools can do to disrupt the school to prison pipeline?
Let's start with Lizzie. This would have been a good one for D, Dr. D.
Yeah, it would have.
Actually,
It
let's
would
start with
have.
East. Let's start with East
Yeah,
because
let's
this
start with
this is more
these.
along your lines.
Hmm.
Okay, just full disclosure, I work as a juvenile probation officer in Washington, D.C. And I think that one way to disrupt that pipeline is maybe a shift in the philosophy of the school resource officer, because in my experience, uh, I think the benefit of the school resource officer is that a school resource officer who's really in tune to the community helps diffuse problems and uh,
Are we talking
uh,
armed or not armed?
armed.
Okay.
Yeah, armed. Yeah, they're in tune to the community. They'll in some cases, depending on their relationship with with the local police force and the school, they get the intelligence from the police department about various activities in the community that might be that might potentially occur in the school. So, in certain cases, with that, if you diffuse a problem um, and eliminate the likelihood of people being arrested or a major issue happening at the school, I'm all for that. Um, but in the example that Katie did, and actually the example that Dr. D gave a few weeks ago, um, there's most officers are trained to arrest people. So they're not going through they're not going through the process of working out issues and uh, getting people to come together in the kumbaya moment. It's who did what. I need to gain control. Somebody needs to go. Somebody needs to be arrested. That's it. So I think there needs to be a shift in philosophy. I think if you can get that shift in school resources, then school resource officer, I don't think you have to defund the school resource officer position. If you can get that fundamental shift, and it's going to take time, but
Hmm.
that's how I believe.
What you think, Lizzie?
So, just to add something, one of the things that what I have heard and or seen in experiences with the school resource officers are often administrators are busy and so they can't handle the situation. So when all of the administrators are busy, they'll send down the resource officer. And sometimes the resource officer is called to a classroom because a teacher has an issue because the kid won't take his hat off. His hat off, won't take his hat off. Because the teacher has made this her thing, no hats in the classrooms, disrespectful, da 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 da. And so right now she has a battle with this kid. So when the resource officer comes in and tells the kid, just take off your hat, and he's like, nope. And then they get in a scuffle or whatever. And then now he's resisting, and then he's probably then taken into custody.
Right.
So to me, I don't I don't know my opinion, if I can share an opinion yet, but I
Yeah.
I don't feel that the resource officers are as needed. They don't really make kids, and some data has shown that really doesn't help kids feel comfortable. And I'm sure there are some great resource officers. However, they will escalate
Mm.
things a lot more than maybe if we had more counselors or people in the building who could support students who are going through trauma or going through an issue with their girlfriend or boyfriend or mother or father, whatever. So, I understand, your position, and you're probably one of the good ones, but
Oh no. Mm.
I'm a pseudo
Don't start
positive.
that. Don't start that. Don't start that.
I'm not saying you're one of the good ones, but I think
Come on,
what's
Neil. Don't
important
start that.
is to realize that unfortunately not all police officers in their hearts are doing it for, out of love for, the kids, or, not even all teachers are.
Right.
And so, you know, there's more to it too. There's layers, definitely layers.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts. I'd like to know more specifically what the arrests are. I'd like to see some data on what they're being arrested for, because we had a conversation about a few weeks back about bullying with Dr. D, who wrote a book on bullying, and you know I'd like to know what black children are being arrested for, so that we could address the underlying problems. I mean, obviously, we obviously there's systemic racism plays a role. There's no question. But could there be more to it than just systemic racism? Could it be home life? Could it be financial issues at home, or could it be, what could it be? There could be
It could
more
be the
to it.
teacher
What's
that
that?
calls the office for
Say
every
it again.
little thing.
Yeah.
It could be the teacher who calls the office or says, I need a resource officer for something stupid, in
Right.
my opinion.
Yeah, I could see that, and that's where the systemic racism would play a role, I think. But I really would like to see, because then once you look at what the arrests are occurring, then you start to address the problem. If the problem is racism, then we start addressing that. If the problem is home life or bullying, then we start to address those things. Because I can see a lot of people, a lot of children, kind of like acting out, you know, from different scenarios, and then the stupid zero tolerance policy that most schools have are leading to them just ultimately just being arrested without. I agree with you in counselors versus resource officers. By the way, Lizzie, do you have any comments? We have about
I was
40
just
seconds.
gonna say a couple of things. One, I believe within maybe the last 6 to 12 months, I've read stories, not necessarily in the DC area, but mostly in Florida or in other parts of the country, where resource officers or police officers have been called in to put handcuffs on children as young as 6 years old.
Crazy.
As young as 6 years old. In
Ridiculous.
the most recent case that I saw, a little 6-year-old girl, she had a tantrum during the day. The school knew that she had some emotional problems, but also had a very difficult home environment. So they knew that there were some things going on with this young lady. And so instead of having someone who is trained to address her, they had teachers who, they have a classroom full of students, they don't know what to do, and she's acting out. And the first inclination was not even because there was no resource officer in the school, it was a police officer. First inclination was to call the police on a 6-year-old because she was having a tantrum and acting out. And by the time the police got there, she was calm. She was sitting with her teacher reading a book. She saw the police officer, and the police officer went to engage her, and she immediately, became frantic, like, well, what are you doing? Well, and I'm gonna arrest you, and immediately pulls out his handcuffs for a 6-year-old. So this is how, like Katie pointed out, this is how, through lack of training, we are dealing with children. I think a lot of people fail to realize, just like adults, children come into certain situations, certain scenarios with a background, with a home life, a lot of times with trauma. Children do have bad days, a lot of times that are through no fault of their own, but we don't acknowledge that and we don't account for that. And a lot of these, resource officers, a lot of these police officers are not trained to deal with this. The police officer in that particular case, he not only arrested her, she's crying, begging him, I don't want to go to the police. I don't want, at 6, crying, I don't want to go to the police. I don't want to go to jail. He's taunting her. It come to find out that he tried to arrest another 6-year-old that day.
Really?
Thankfully, he tried to arrest another 6-year-old that day. And I know Ginger Man's coming up. Hold up.
Let's take a few more minutes to discuss this, though.
It's a boogie break.
So he tried to arrest another 6-year-old at a different school that day. And that administration, once he got there and they saw what was happening, they stepped in. For this young lady, I guess they were kind of intimidated. They didn't know what their options were. So he did arrest her, put her in the back of his car, and took her to jail. She was fingerprinted. She had a mugshot at 6 for having a tantrum in school. And so my question is, like, where is the common sense? This is a child. And it turns out that he had other charges against him, including his own personal domestic violence charge against someone in his home who was a child.
So I noticed you
And
didn't say any
so,
names. Was it East?
See, there you go again.
I mean, okay, so East and Neo, I don't know if you recall this. So you remember when we were in high school at Wilson, and they didn't call them resource officers back then. I don't know what they called them, but we did have, like floating security guards in the high school. So Katie did, so a couple of these security guards in the high school, they weren't really into being offering security for us. I remember 2 distinctively, they were more in tunes with trying to get with the 10th, 11th, and 12-year-old girls on campus, which also speaks to a lack of training, which also speaks to people who should not be in position. Exactly. So I think first and foremost, it starts with that. Like, who are you hiring to come in to our schools to engage with our children and to protect them and to be their security? Like, I don't find you to be a credible security officer if you are boasting about and think it's appropriate to put handcuffs on a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
She's 6.
Before we move
I've seen worse tantrums in Toys R Us. She's 6.
Yeah.
Like we have to be better about this.
Couple of comments online. We have Jacqueline. Our children are not seen as innocents. Rupka says, "Isn't that why they are in school and not at work? Aren't they there to learn social and educational skills?
Mm.
Learn is the key word." Mike Winter says, "Nasty Bama's trying to get some." Talking about the security guards at Woodrow Wilson. And Latoya says, "My locker in ninth grade was right next to the security office and was broken into." Hashtag, why are you here?
They probably broke into them.
All right, Katie, do you have any last words on that before we move on?
No, I think I enjoyed this, discussion, and thank you
Okay.
for engaging.
Oh, no question.